In this video, I will compare the AMD Ryzen 5 6600H and AMD Ryzen 5 5600H, highlighting their differences, and then provide a conclusion to help you determine which one is the better choice. Both of these processors are AMD processor, but they have their strengths and weaknesses. Let's look at them. The Ryzen 6600H was released 1 year after the launch of the Ryzen 5600H. Both of these processors feature 6 cores and 12 threads. The increased number of cores and threads in the Ryzen 6600H allows for the simultaneous and efficient handling of multiple tasks. The base clock frequency of both processors is 3.3 GHz. The boost clock frequency of the Ryzen 6600H is 4.5 GHz, while that of the Ryzen 5600H is 4.2 GHz. With a higher boost clock frequency, the Ryzen 6600H demonstrates superior performance under heavy CPU loads. Both processors have L1, L2 and L3 cache sizes of 64 KB per core, 512 KB per core, and 16 MB shared, respectively. A larger cache generally enhances system performance by enabling the processor to quickly store and retrieve more data and instructions, reducing the need to fetch data from slower main memory. The memory size supported by the Ryzen 6600H is 64 GB, while the Ryzen 5600H supports up to 32 GB. The memory types supported by the Ryzen 6600H include DDR5 and LPDDR5, whereas the Ryzen 5600H supports DDR4 and LPDDR4. Additionally, the Ryzen 6600H supports higher speed memory modules compared to the Ryzen 5600H. Both of these processors support integrated graphics, and the boost frequency of the integrated graphics for the Ryzen 5 6600H is slightly higher than that of the Ryzen 5 5600H, resulting in better graphical performance for the 5600H. As the Ryzen 5600H supports ECC, while the Ryzen 6600H does not, the Ryzen 5600H is considered to be more suitable for critical systems. The Ryzen 6600H supports PCI version 4, whereas the Ryzen 5600H supports only PCI version 3. Additionally, the number of PCI lanes for the Ryzen 6600H is 20, while the Ryzen 5600H has 16. The increased number of PCI lanes can be beneficial for expanding connectivity and accommodating high-performance components. The Ryzen 5600H can withstand higher temperatures than the Ryzen 6600H. The Ryzen 5600H can tolerate temperatures up to 105 degrees Celsius, whereas the Ryzen 6600H has a maximum temperature tolerance of 95 degrees Celsius. The Ryzen 5 6600H has a fixed TDP of 45 watts, whereas the Ryzen 5 5600H features a configurable TDP ranging from 35 to 54 watts. This implies that the Ryzen 5 6600H can be configured to operate at a lower power consumption compared to the Ryzen 5 5600H. However, Ryzen 5600H can also be adjusted to run at a higher power consumption, providing enhanced performance. Now, let's explore the benchmark comparison. Examining Cinebench R23, the Ryzen 5 6600H appears to outperform the Ryzen 5 5600H in both single-core and multi-core applications. Similarly, in Geekbench V6, the Ryzen 6600H exhibits superior performance compared to the Ryzen 5 5600H in both single-core and multi-core scenarios. Ultimately, the choice between these processors is in your hands. Make a wise decision by considering these specifications and benchmarks. This much for today. If you liked this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Also click on bell icon to never miss any update. Thank you.